Howdy, team. Welcome to the first video of this series on looping. And looping as a concept is the ability for your code to repeat certain statements again and again and again for some number of iterations. You get to control how long a loop is going to execute. Ideally, it doesn't loop forever. Though once it loops forever, you will officially be a computer scientist. But before we get into too much of the looping syntax, I want to talk about something. We've mentioned this possibly, you might have seen this before, but I want to go more in depth into how this little shorthand for incrementing and decrementing operators, how those work. So what these are, this is a little syntactic sugar to increase or decrease a variable's value. So it is always going to be by 1, the integer 1. So the shorthand is like variable plus plus. This is how your variable is usually an int or a double or a char, something that has a numeric value. And by writing variable plus plus, what that means is you are taking the variable and adding 1 to it. Similarly, variable minus minus takes the variable and subtracts 1 from it. So here's an example. We have int x equals 2. When we say x plus plus, that's equivalent to x equals x plus 1. So after that statement executes, x is going to store 3. Similarly, if we were to use minus minus, it's equivalent to the variable minus 1. After that line executes, the GPA is now going to store 1.5. So that's what the variable is going to include. It's a little bit more interesting than that. So I'd like to show you some code in Eclipse. So I've written out some short examples. We've started with a variable here called mints. We have 7 mints. And I want to show you what the variable looks like before we do the increment, when we do the increment, which is right here, and then finally after we do the increment, because it is also possible to use, so here we have mints plus plus, which is what we talked about on this slide. It is also possible to have plus plus mints. So you can add the plus plus before the variable, and that is going to modify the variable at a slightly different time. So when we have mints plus plus, what's going to happen is that Java is going to read the variable mints, and then it's going to add 1 afterward. So it's going to say, when incremented, give me the current value of mints, which is 7, and then increment it after. So this is going to say before is 7, because that's the value of mints there. When incremented, it's going to still say 7. But then after, this one is going to say 8. Now, if you put the plus plus before the variable instead of after, what it means is it is going to increment the value before it is used. Remember that up here, it's incremented after it's used. Here, incremented before it's used. So this one is going to say, here we're resetting it to 7. So it's going to say before is 7, when incremented, this is going to go to 8. And then after, it's going to be 8. Let me run that for you. So keep in mind that if you need it to be incremented right away, when you read that value, you want it to be incremented immediately, then you need to put the plus plus before the variable. If you want to use the value after, then you want plus plus after the variable. Most of the time, you are going to have something like mints plus plus, and that's your whole statement. So often you're not like you're not incrementing as you're using it. Most of the time, mints plus plus is a whole statement in its entirety, I guess. So in that case, you can use either mints plus plus or plus plus mints because you only care about the value as it has changed after the semicolon. So either way, both are fast, both are in a full statement like this, functionally equivalent. The only difference is when you are using it inside some other computation. In this case, it's being used inside a string concatenation. Um, Additionally, I have not mentioned you can do minus minus instead of plus plus. And I should change this to be decremented. And we can get rid of that. We don't need that anymore. I just want to show you that this will work the same. So we should get 776 and 766. Yes. Fantastic. All right, team. That is the end of this video. Tune in for the next one very soon. See you, team.